Hello everybody, thank you for this opportunity again. My talk's topic is music, and which is gathered all around us. When you take a moment to just stop and listen what you're doing, just listen to the world around you, you start to notice how every sound is basically produced. And from car horns to advertisement music to that musician doing music on the corner of the street, you can realize that somebody has composed this. There are a bunch of companies that are basically doing music and a bunch of apps for people to produce and listen to music, which many of you may use. I would like to touch upon a composer, a Hollywood composer, Hans Zimmer, who composed, there's a specific sound that comes when you start a BMW i4. Has anybody heard that sound? Okay. There's a specific sound that comes off when you start a BMW i4. That specific sound was produced and composed by Hans Zimmer for that specific car that makes it stand out in the community, and that gives it an iconic look. Has anybody heard an advertisement with a classical music as its jingle? Okay. Classical music has been used in advertisements in new music and pop culture since a long time. And Canon and D is a great example for this. Canon and D has been used over and over again by many artists, by many composers. And one of the great examples is Crying by Aerosmith, which was produced in 1993. It's a great example because they used the chord progression, but not the song itself. They added some stuff to it, they made it into a rock song, which did well in its age. And then we have Memories by Maroon 5, which was produced in 2021, and it really was a trend at the time, but later people realized that it was basically the same as Canon and D, the original piece. When we compare the sheet music, we can start to see the patterns just repeat and repeat all over the song, and it's basically a copy, which I don't think is very ethical, which brings us to the topic of public domain. The public domain law was made in the 1st of January 1978, which suggests that if it has been 70 years after an artist's and author's death, all of their pieces, all of their art is in the public domain, which means that it can be used in any type of piece, any type of poetry, any type of literature without getting copyrighted. This is used for the advantage of many artists in our community right now. We can see many artists, from the French artist in Eurovision, that I think that she's a great example for this. She uses a bunch of composers' old music in her songs, taking pieces and using the chord progressions to create timeless sounds, which are beautiful. I recommend it. And I'd like to show some manuscripts of composers, original manuscripts, which have been auctioned before. So if you take a look, I don't think it's very visible, but if you take a look at Mozart's manuscript, you see how effortless it is, because Mozart generally wrote his songs in one sitting, his pieces in one sitting. And when we take a look at Beethoven, it's more scrabbled, it's been done up, it definitely took time, and most of his pieces are like this because he is more perfectionist than Mozart. I don't want to say he's more passionate, because all of these artists have had great impacts on the society. And Beethoven is known for taking more time on his pieces, perfecting them and making them to satisfy his needs. And then I'd have to add Chopin, because he is one of my personal favorites, I'd say. He is a perfect mix, in my opinion, of Mozart and Beethoven, where he is not as sloppy or as fast as Mozart, but not as strict and as perfecting as Beethoven. He's just in the middle, and his pieces are very hard to play, as many may know. The reason, by the way, I'd like to add Mozart's pieces are so effortless looking is because he is so talented, and his Talent was discovered at a very young age of 4, and from that time on, he started going on tours on palaces, and his only fun time was parties, which means that he didn't get to live his childhood, and that really reflects on his music, which is more considered to be childish. Beethoven's music is a bit more hard to understand, in my opinion, because he went deaf after a point, so he couldn't really hear what he was playing, but he used his music theory knowledge and all of the sounds that he had heard earlier on, and then wrote many of the pieces. Actually, there's a Nescafe ad that has been up many recently, which uses Furley's and a remix of it. That's a good example. And Chopin's love for Poland reflects on his music as well. His heart was buried in Poland, fun fact. Which brings us to the topic of composers really having their time, and now too, artists spend a lot of time on their music, and it generally comes to them, which in an example where Taylor Swift in an interview said, she said that writing interrupts her life so much that she would have to go out in a friend meeting and record in a corner, then come back because she had a great idea for a song, which many of us, if you do music, many of us get ideas, many of us get melodies in our heads that inspire us. So next time, when you hear a melody in your head, please record it somewhere, write it down if it's some lyrics. Please do that, because maybe one day fame will knock on your door. Thank you for listening.